Maybe it's getting older. Maybe it's just having a better perspective on things as time goes by, but there's a field I didn't have much respect for, or maybe awareness of, that has become forefront in a lot of what I'm doing right now. And that area is logistics. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, a podcast about technology, history, and getting myself out of debt. Thanks to Jeff Atwood, Daniel Boyd, and the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. The problems in scanning the computer shopper collection that is now filling up one of my storage rooms is not a matter of the pure scanning part. And thanks to Gaming Alexandria, it's not even a problem with post-processing. No, the problem is keeping track of roughly 200 paper issues, many of which are going to be split apart and then run through a very nice scanner, producing gigabytes of TIFF files, which can then be dealt with for other parts of the project. Fundamentally, the goal of this entire computer shopper experience is to turn a bunch of paper into digital files so that myself and later historians and artists and researchers can take those scans and have them digitally available at any time. As an extra bonus, it's nice to be able to walk through all of the different issues and find out when things cost what, and just enjoy that aesthetic, that ink on newspaper feel that Computer Shopper did for so many years. But there's a big difference between bidding and winning on a eBay auction and actually having 700 pounds of paper that you need to do the same thing to over and over again. Mere instructions would be easy. Take each issue, split it apart, put each of the pages through a scanner, and then run processing on the resulting TIFF files so that they're aligned and properly contrasted until finally clomping them together into a PDF or a zip file and uploading them to the Internet Archive and elsewhere so that we all can share in this bounty. But that's where it ends in terms of being easy. It turns out every step has additional steps, additional problems that crop up while you're doing it, to the point where you just can't stand on the top of everything, write a simple set of directives, and think there's nothing more to it. If you're somebody who has ever had to implement a written plan, a sketched idea, this is all known to you. These are facts when you're trying to turn ideas into reality. But I had come from an online project world. My area is scripting and programming and writing and directives, getting things done by writing code that once you solved a problem, figured out how to divide things or cut up a string of text, you could move on to the next problem. Nothing, in other words, felt the feel of entropy. All of that goes out the window once you're doing a process that involves stuff, disks, printouts, magazines, where not only is it a problem to move through the to-do pile, the to-do pile doesn't stay still. Take, for example, the first issue of Computer Shopper, which I wanted to scan. I specifically chose something from the mid-90s, so it wasn't rare, and in fact, we had 2 copies of it. So if whatever I was doing got everything wrong, we could start over again with a brand new issue. I would have counted myself really smart if it wasn't for the fact that there were a whole bunch of other speed bumps I didn't account for. Now, multiple magazine scanning groups in a fit of altruism have all sorts of how-tos that try to walk you through potential pitfalls. And there's almost an urge to ignore some of their warnings, to ignore their sign before the abyss or the ocean, saying, "You're different. You're somebody who can keep track of these things." Well, it just took a little while for me to learn all of the hard lessons. For example, magazine pages are slippery. If you stack them on top of each other, that may not be sufficient to keep a pile. Some of them have very, very little friction, which means over time, a small breeze, a small looking in one direction even, could send enough wind to cause pages to start to fly off. And if you weren't watching, you could suddenly find everything scrambled on the floor. In the case of the computer shoppers, they were bound together using hot glue. I took them apart and ended up with stacks of the pages. Using scissors and razors, I was able to cut the glue off of the edge. Except I didn't. In some cases, I missed a minuscule amount of glue, a really impossible amount to see. But in the scanner, in the feed scanner, that little piece of glue would suddenly go through a hot scanner, melt in that millisecond, and grab onto the glass, sending the pages flying or crunching up. It was a huge surprise to me because I was thinking of everything as bunches, abstract piles. So after fixing that problem multiple times and then successfully scanning the pages, I then had to deal with how to store them while doing quality assurance. To make this happen, I went out and bought a special plastic bin, very small, very thin, just the size of these pages, just so that they could be held somewhere temporarily in case I missed a page or had it come out weird or skewed or misprocessed, which happened out of 700 pages a few times. So there I was, opening up my special little container, splitting apart the pages, searching through, trying to find the one sheet that I needed, and then running it through. Again, hoping that nothing would go wrong, and then renaming all of these files to deal with that problem. Everything became fractal. Even as I moved through the files themselves, I discovered I had to make decisions about which direction the pages had gone in, meaning some scans were upside down, some were right side up. That meant going through 700 pages, determining what was wrong with them, and then, even worse, finding that with very close observation, there had been some unintended cropping. Every aspect of this, a matter of discovering it wasn't going to be the minimal process of taking a bunch of things, putting them through a machine, and ending up with a digital file. Now, everything was going to be an adventure, a side path, a shortcut resulting in misery and going back to do it the proper way. A constant reminder that there was no way this was going to take any less time than I thought it would, and it would probably take a bunch more. It's been said that sociology is spending a lot of time to learn what everybody already knew. But I would venture that logistics is the art of presenting everybody exactly what they expected while dealing with everything that they failed to account for. It's not a matter of just taking an item, dropping it in the mail, and then never thinking about it again. So many problems involving mail, bounced addresses, typographical errors in how you put things in from sheets, and then not accounting for the fact that some of your packages just simply won't survive the trip. Everything becoming harder. But with proper logistics, you give yourself the time, the buffer, the additional rounds, the bites at the apple to figure out how to do it right. There's an entire foundation that will never be seen from this computer shopper project, where I was working with some really great people at Gaming Alexandria, especially Hubs, to come up with a process that could be repeated a dozen, a couple dozen times with each particular issue, splitting apart, accounting for glue, scanning through, double-checking my work, sending the raw scans to hubs to be processed, processing them, and then sending them back. We successfully did one this way. The intention is to keep going until they're all gone, which may eventually lead to people sending me all of the missing issues that we don't have. Regardless, at the end, people will love these computer shoppers. Just going through the one issue that has been completely digitized and put on the Internet Archive, I'll tell you that people are going through the pages, finding delight and humor and history and reference in every page, while at the same time wondering, well, why don't you just do it again and again and again? That is the power of logistics. And if I wasn't converted before, I am absolutely a diehard convert now. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It. Thanks to James Bekoyanu, Mark Pilgrim, Ernie Hershey, Michael Rubin, Craig Talbert, Dilip Reddy, Sean Kelly, Trixie the Cat, Martin, Sembiance, and Anonymous, along with the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. Maybe it's not so much logistics that I've suddenly got a new respect for. Maybe it's empathy for the fact that when we ever see a project, especially a project that has complicated underpinnings, there's a person with time and effort who has gone through the incredible amount of work to make things just be. The sorting out of wayward or damaged items, the verifications, the many spreadsheets, the functional checking on every step of the way to make sure that while things may go wrong, those facts may be accounted for. That there be a general moving away from split-second tolerances, moments of reason that can't be inserted because everything is in chaos. Planning on a Monday for something you're going to do on a Friday may be overkill, or maybe it's not enough. This empathy I feel for all of the people who do this work and don't make a habit of calling out to it, maybe getting a single name at the end, well, they're saints to me. Stepping through the Computer Shopper project and dealing with tens of thousands of pages, I realize that only a small amount of the work will be me putting stacks of paper into a very nice scanner and watching them run through. That's really the first step to the first part of the first half of the first act.